let's turn our attention to the Six Nations. Warren Gatland against Ireland. This is very exciting, and I'm delighted to say, to help preview the game, two legends, Keith Wood and Tom Shanklin. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm very good. Tom, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much.
Around about this time every year, we would taunt Wales about how, you're no good. But actually this year, I'm terrified of doing it because Warren Gatland's picked a team that's really strong, loads of experience, just a nice little sprinkling, a soupçon of youth. And, it's suddenly the ghosts of Welsh beatings handed out to us over the last decade or so randomly is starting to haunt us a bit. Are you feeling confident?
I wish I felt as confident as you. I can't believe you taunt us that badly. But more confident than I was last year because Warren Gatland is back and he's got the ability to be able to get the best out of players. I think that's why he's so good. That's his USP, is the ability to get the players to overperform. So slightly more confident than I was last year, but we're still going through a period where we're relying on a lot of old players. There's 8 of the 23 which played in the 2012 Six Nations. So we still have a big reliance on a lot of the older guys. You're talking mid-30 players, age group. So Ireland coming number one team in the world, slightly daunting because we know how good Ireland are at the moment until you guys reach a World Cup.
Yeah.
But the pressure is off us, which is good. The pressure is off us, which is good. We got a new 12 in Joe Hawkins, so it allowed Wales hopefully to play a little bit wider. But I am nervous. I won't lie to you.
Keith, were you rolling your eyes there at the pressure's off us, or was that just a?
Yeah, a little bit. I love, I love and hate the sort of pre-match chat that happens with coaches and Shanks, in fairness to him, is well able to sucker us into a false sense of security. But look, it's funny. I just think it looks like history repeating itself in many respects. And if I went back to disturbingly 23 years ago, when Gatland, after the World Cup in Lens, he stuck with the old stagers, pretty much all the old team, for the first game against England, and we got hockeyed. And then there was a huge raft of changes came in immediately after against Scotland, and that seemed to be the change that happened, that the young blood got the opportunity. So I think in many respects he's gone back to what he knows. He's gone back to a group of guys he trusts and who trust him. I will agree with Tom that he knows how to get the best out of Wales, and the players are very confident with the style that he wants to play. It does look like a too old team for the first match of a year going into a World Cup, and whether a lot of those guys will be there. But he also has an idea that people have to fight for the jersey, so they're not giving it up too easily. I would go into this not with nerves, but with a level of excitement in that Ireland are number one in the World Cup. We've consistently reacted poorly to that title. We just have to go out and prove that we can play better than Wales can. And I don't know how much of an influence he can have. He will get them playing focused, but I have to believe that Ireland have to have that confidence to back up their placing, to back up the skills that they have and the players that they have. And we're pretty much injury free for the most part. I think it'll be a very tough game. We've lost there consistently over the last, whatever it is, 6 or 8 years. So, for me, it would be enough of a grudge match to make certain that Ireland bring their top game.
Tom, we did a good deep dive with the statistics yesterday with a rugby analyst who was basically pointing out that Wales have been so far off it over the last year or so that actually to improve, all they really have to do to make a significant improvement would be to do the basics right. And that's one of the things that Gatland always gets right, is like everybody knows exactly what their job is. Everybody fulfills the functions within that role. And if you don't, you come out of the team. But the certainty around what Gatlin will give the team and trying to do, I guess that's one of the reasons why he's gone back to the old stagers.
Yeah, it is. definitely is. He's a massive focus on set piece, and I think that's why he's picked 6 Ospreys in the pack against Ireland at the weekend. We saw what the Ospreys did to Montpellier home and away. We saw how good their scrum was against Leinster recently. And his game is based a lot around set piece. So you get a good scrum, then you've got the ability to attack off that. And as I said, we've got a new sort of dynamic backline, which is really good. We've gone away from having just a big ball carrier in 12. We've got a ball player there now. So a lot of moves and a lot of attack now comes off the 12. It's sort of 12 has been redefined in rugby really as their role. It's not just smash and bang and big hit. It's been having the ability to put people into space and to attack off 12. So I'm really excited about Joe Hawkins, and selection was big for me. And it was announced yesterday. It was done really early, plenty of confidence behind it. And it was sort of saying, right, this is our team. And I think they're going to attack a little bit wider. I don't think we can outmuscle Ireland at the moment because of the big carriers you guys have got and the power you've got. And I think we have to be careful about where we attack. So I think, as I said, that the 12 position is key, and that just gives us 2 ball players now, so we can play a little bit wider. We've got a fairly mobile back row as well, which isn't really used to sort of pick and go in the tight. It's more of a dynamic back row, which will play a little bit wider, and you've got players like Tipperick and Faletau, which can play in those wide channels. So for me, it makes sense to play wide. It doesn't make sense to try and pick and go and to keep it tight against a team like Ireland. So they're the exciting parts. But you need to get it right on the day.
Were you surprised, Tom, by the Lee Halfpenny inclusion? I think it's the first start for him in 19 months. He gets the nod ahead of Liam Williams, you'd imagine, to, I guess, counteract that Irish kicking threat as well. But did they come a little bit out of the blue?
I was quite surprised with his selection. I was quite surprised with Alan Wynne-Jones' selection. The problem we've got at 15 is that there's no players coming through, really. There's Lee Halfpenny and Liam Williams, and they're the 2 players that basically Wales have got to rely on. We've seen Josh Adams play a little bit of 15 recently, and he could hold down that position in time to come. But Liam Williams hasn't played much recently. He's had concussion issues. He went off with a bad hand against Brive away in the Challenge Cup. So there'd be a limit to the amount of training that he would have done. What you get with Lee Halfpenny, though, is just someone that's unbelievably solid. He's like a goalkeeper at the back. He won't miss tackles. He won't drop balls. He'll be able to kick the ball out of defence accurately, even very low error count. But I think you limit yourself slightly with that counter-attack ability. And I look at Ireland's counter-attack and someone like Hugo Keenan. He's a fantastic player, and he's a threat everywhere when he's got ball in hand. So as much as it is good in defence to have Lee Halfpenny, I still think it just limits what we can do in attack slightly.
Keith, the point is well made about Gatlin naming his team early in the week. It's going to be a rallying cry for the Welsh fans. I haven't heard yet about the roof and what the story is with it, but the atmosphere will be absolutely incredible. From an Ireland perspective, we're very hungry to see what Ryan Baird can do in the team. We're very hungry to see how well any of the players slightly below the top rank in the depth chart might do. But the first week up in the Six Nations, Andy Farrell is going to be true, it looks like, to how he has always picked, and it's best team available for the game, irrespective of long-term planning. And it's worked for him so far. You hope that it's going to work for us around the World Cup, as Tom kindly points out again to us. So what would you do in this scenario? Is it best available 15 to start, best available subs, or is there any room for stick Ryan Baird in the team, keep the rest of the team full and see what happens?
What I think has changed with Farrell over the last period of time is that the manner in which you've laid that out, it kind of shows as if there's an element of risk involved in picking Ryan Baird or something like that. I don't view Farrell's mindset in that way. I think he picks the best team always. He picks the best guys to win the game. He makes certain that certain guys get rested at different times, and I think there are matches where that can happen. But he hasn't been shy in dropping players in. I mean, I think there could be the opportunity of Jamie Osborne getting a run very early. This sounds like a repeating loop, but Six Nations is about momentum. You want to get off to a win. If you don't get off to a win, you're struggling always. confidence drops very quickly. So if you get a win at the start, everything works. It's whatever decisions he decides he wants to make in terms of that. So I think he more than most, I think the IRFU have dealt with the idea that you earn your crust in the Six Nations, and that's something that's essential. And in terms of all the finances, all the sponsorship, everything that happens, this is ludicrously huge business, huge competition. This is the one that you drive the whole professional game in Ireland with. So you can't suddenly chop and change too much. But I think if you look at what's happened over the last year in particular, I think he's made pretty decent decisions to bring players in and out. They've worked for the most part. He is willing to have a go. I don't know that necessarily this is the game to do so.
If you're Andy Farrell, Keith, just judging on what you're saying, are you throwing Jamie Osborne in from the start, or is it a Bundy Aki, a more natural, traditional selection? I was trying to make the case for Stuart McCluskey yesterday. That number 12 position is one of the, I guess, the standout question marks over the team this week.
Look, I really think it is. I think Robbie Henshaw is our first number 12, and he's injured. So who are the guys that are going to take it up? I think McCluskey has consistently played well for Ulster when he's played for Ireland, when he's got his chances, which have been few and far between. It hasn't exactly gone his way, and he hasn't got it in a full team. He did in the autumn. He did some very good stuff and then drifted a little, I think. Bundy hasn't played for a while, has been suspended and hasn't been picked then by Connacht. Osborne got a chance and took a chance and looks really, really exciting. But one player is not the same as changing 5 players. So if you think that this guy is a really big, viable alternative and has youth, gas, and all the attributes that you want, yes, you can. It's not a huge risk to change one player. It's a huge risk to change 6 players. But to put one player in, I don't think it's a risk at all. And for me to take the opportunity that we have because of Robbie Henshaw's pretty bad injury record, I think it would be great to have another player that might be the bolter for the World Cup. So I wouldn't see it as a risk putting him in the team.
Tom, the quality of rugby that you expect from Gatlin, how quickly do you expect the turnaround to happen? Keith's point about the 23 years ago when we got absolutely annihilated by England. The next week we ended up picking Stringer and O'Gara, Easterby, Shane Horgan, and somebody else came in.
John Hayes.
All of whom went on to have between 80 and 100 caps and completely transformed the face of Irish rugby. Although, interestingly, Gatlin ended up, as he would say, getting stabbed in the back and wasn't allowed to take it to glory. In this situation, he's there for the long haul. Everybody knows he's going to be around for this World Cup and the next World Cup. So he needs to manage his resources very carefully. But if for example, things didn't go well, would you expect that there is a core of new players coming through who can affect what he wants to do quickly?
I don't think there's a core of a big group of players coming through. I think we've got certain individuals that will come through, but this is the big worry in Wales. Like when Gatlin took over, he had the core of players and he had them for sort of 10, 12 years now. We don't have that strength and depth coming through. There's certain individual players, but he's going to have to do it. It's going to be totally different to 2008 when he came in, when he had this group of players. Now he's got a lot of the players that he's relied on. At some stage, they will be retiring, and he's going to have to blood youngsters coming through. So it's very different for him. I think we'll see an instant impact in, I think, the confidence levels of players on the pitch, the energy levels of players on the pitch, the commitment that maybe we didn't see in the autumn. Losing to who did we lose? Lost to Australia, lost to Georgia. We were really down and low on confidence. So I think he'll install that in players. But I think that's why he's had to pick a lot of old players now for this first test, because he knows what they can do. He's confident in what they can do. It's the World Cup around the corner. I think had it not been the World Cup this year, then he might have gone with a new look Welsh team, and he might have put players out of pasture and brought some youngsters in. But because it is World Cup, he's having to go back to what he knows best, really. But that isn't the future. At some stage, we're going to have to reshuffle, remold this Welsh team, and we're going to have to bring youngsters in because these guys can't go forever.
Tom, there's been a lot made of the Netflix cameras and the, what they're doing inside each individual camp, and it seems to be some of the countries are adapting to it maybe easier than others, and some players are adapting to it easier than others. I know the unions stand to make, I think it's €113,000 each for the first year. This will air in 2024. As a player, what do you make of the whole thing? Like, I think it was a 4-man crew following the Irish team around in the Algarve this week. Is it a distraction, or is too much being made out of it?
I know Keith Wood would have loved it. I think we could tell by the '97 Lions tour. He'd been all over that and camera every shot. I think it's great for the game. I watched the Drive to Survive, which they did on Netflix. I've watched some of the other ones they've done behind the scenes at football stadiums and football teams, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great insight for people into professional game at the top level as well. It's about inspiring youngsters. It's about getting people interested in rugby. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to play rugby, seeing those legends of the '97 Lions tour on that video, and I thought, that is what I want. I want some of that fun. I want to be sucking belly buttons in a bar. I want to be having a few drinks after games. You want that camaraderie, and I think the Netflix show will get that across, and I think it's about growing the game as well. So I can't see many people not wanting to do it. I think maybe some of the coaches might be slightly nervous about what they're going to show, but in terms of the camera crews following the players around, following the team meetings, I think it's massive, and I think it's great for the game. I think it's the way forward. I
think the reports in the paper, some of the papers this morning, Keith, suggest that 7 or 8 Irish players have already sat down for interviews with the Netflix crew. Reportedly, Keith Earls and Peter O'Mahony amongst that group. Johnny Sexton maybe not as forthcoming with time. Can you understand?
Social media superstar Peter O'Mahony, that is.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like, can you see why some players wouldn't want to go near any of this?
Absolutely, but it's funny. I think if it grows the game, that's fantastic. I was actually surprised by the amount of money. It seemed to be very small.
Yeah.
I would worry a little bit about editorial control. The idea, Duncan, who was the head of our crew in '97, him and his team were totally in the background, so they never asked you a question. In whatever it was, in the 6 weeks we were on tour, there was no question asked directly of the players, and they kind of drifted into the background. You never really knew they were there, and they weren't. It wasn't intrusive in any way, shape, or form. What you don't actually want to do is have players change their behaviours because they have a camera on them. The sort of unintended consequence of being viewed will change something, So, look, I think it can be great for the game because we're looking to try and make the game bigger. But as always, you just want to make certain that it's all about the game and the game doesn't get affected by it. So, but I can understand why some guys don't want to do it. And, if someone says, we want to interview me, and they say, well, I don't want to, I'm concentrating on the game. That's their right too, So, and much contrary to Shanks's line, I was stunned by how much I was in that video in '97 for the very simple reason that
Slash delighted.
There was 170 hours of footage actually was cut down to that. So my mother wasn't particularly happy because of my bad language, but that happens too.
The truth will out eventually. Tom, I guess the point about the people not wanting to be filmed is that there's always some clown in the corner with a camera and their phone live streaming or recording something for Instagram. So they're probably quite aware of the fact that they're potentially being filmed, sometimes accidentally by a teammate, as the Irish women's football team found out.
Yeah, no, there will be. And Keith's right, it is editorial control, really. But I look at all the bad PR going around rugby at the moment, and it's about encouraging youngsters to play rugby when they're young. So, we don't lose them to the system. There's loads of issues with rugby at the moment, and I think this is a perfect way of trying to grow it and get people more excited by it. There's always people that don't want to do media. There's always people that don't want to do interviews, whether it's in the week, whether it's post game. There's shy people and there's extrovert people. So I think, like Keith said, the best way is just sort of blending into the background and trying to let people be themselves. You will have to be a little bit careful. around the cameras. Like, you can't be showing all these WhatsApp messages, some videos going through with loud noises coming up. But there'll be a lot of fun in there as well, and there'll be a lot of banter and a lot of people trying to stitch each other up on camera and everything, and be part of it, because it's also a bit of a shop window to sell yourself as well, because it's not just about rugby, it's about what you do after rugby as well.
I think that's a key point. We're completely out of time here, folks, but I'm looking for predictions before we go. Keith, you sound confident that Ireland can go over and control the game and win?
Yeah, I am confident. We have to prove it for every minute of the game, but I would hope and think that Ireland would win by 8-10.
We would take that. Tom, what do you think is going to happen?
I think Leinster and Ireland will come over, and I think they'll be too strong. They're too well drilled. They're too good in attack and defence, and I think it could be around 12 to 15 points, Ireland win.
I'm glad you made that Leinster and Bundyaki quip, because if we make it, we get killed by the Munster fans. But
12 to 15 points. You're shithousing us here, Tom, I think.
I've taken the pressure off Wales, right? Because I don't really mean that, I think. No, I do. I think at the moment, where Ireland are, and with Wales and new combinations, I think it's going to be a really tough ask to play such a quality team at the moment who are peaking.
Well, we've hopefully piqued the appetite of everybody watching this morning. Keith Wood, Tom Shanklin, great to have you with us, folks. Thanks a million.
Cheers, gents.